Hello, and welcome to all the truth seekers that have joined us today from around the world. I'm glad that you've joined this online community. For the next hour, GMDC will help uncover new ideas that will push your thinking inside and outside of your business. My name is Mark McKelsey, and I lead the people and the projects that bring you insights, shopper trends, and next practices from Global Market Development Center. This Infocast aspires to make your lunch hour profitable by demonstrating just how the curiosity and the power of the consumer must be at the center of your strategy. In other words, the way you've done things in the past is not the way your future success will happen. Retailers and brands, more than ever, must be adaptive and in constant flux in order to connect with evolving populations. So how you respond to this session is important. Without further ado, let's jump into it. I'm coming live to you from Colorado Springs and have Boon-Long from Edge by Ascential in Boston with us today. Today's Infocast will help you understand how the pet and home general merchandise categories are a gateway to the retail industry and are shifting between online and offline, what the new consumer expectations are, how and where to find them, and also help you know what's next in those spending areas. Since millennials have now surpassed the aging baby boomer population as becoming the biggest pet owning generation, and many more millennials are buying their first home and either thinking about it or already starting their own family, it's no wonder why these categories resonate with most of them today in regards to pet and household. In a recent report by GMDC and AT Kearney, not only are we seeing both of these categories exceeding year-over-year store sales, but both online and in-store are benefiting from that growth. Furthermore, we're seeing premium pricing and demand increasing in popularity, which is driving up the sales volume and creating higher profitability for retailers and .coms who are offering the latest and most innovative trends. GMDC is also tracking what is happening in the toy category across our retail channels shortly after the closing of Toys R Us. We see mass and grocery stores benefiting from the most since that bankruptcy. So why are we saying this? Something similar is happening that we see in both the pet and the home as specialty brick and mortar stores continue to face similar challenges and struggle for traffic just like Toys R Us did. As a result, pet and home are rising in relevancy in the food channel due to convenience and frequency of trip in these outlets. So Maud, would you help our viewers know a bit more about what they can expect to learn today?
Yes, definitely. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Boon-Long, and I'm an analyst here at Edge by Ascential. Today, for the Household and Pet Care webinar, we'll be looking at, first of all, a sector overview to see what the financial performance is for these categories, where they're growing, and who's winning in this landscape. We'll also look at some of the best-in-class retailer and supplier initiatives on how they're innovating the landscape and the space, both offline and online, before wrapping up with some of the key implications for both brand and retailers to take away from this webinar.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. So before we get started and dive in, I'd like to remind our viewers that we can take questions during or after the session by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So please don't use the chat button, but use the Q&A. That's the one that we'll be monitoring for the conversation at the end. So let's get started. Back over to you, Maud.
Great, thank you. Now let me share my screen so then we can get started. Great, so thank you again, everyone, for joining me this afternoon. As we go through this webinar, we'll get started with the sector overview, looking at some of that financial forecast in 2018 and 2023 for the household and pet care categories, before looking at some of the retailer and supplier initiatives and summarizing all of that with our takeaways and key implications at the end. But before we take a look at some of that data, I wanted to make sure everyone is on the same page for what we are referring to under the household and pet care category definitions. So when we're talking about household care, we're really looking at the laundry and cleaning supply type products that you see in those household aisle, as well as the paper and plastic products such as paper towels, tissue papers, and Ziploc bags. For the pet care categories, here, this includes both pet food as well as pet products and supplies such as pet toys, pet furniture, and pet healthcare products. As we look through the initiatives, on both the retailer and supplier side, we're going to be looking at that through the lens of our 4 winning strategies here that we have defined at Edge by Ascential. And I'll go into a little more detail on that later, but there's going to be 4 main core areas that we talk about, which are the store of the future, e-commerce and digital ecosystem management, supply chain and fulfillment, as well as shopper engagement and retention. So when we look at the household and pet care sector overall, we can see here that consumer spending for these categories are growing across the board in all regions of the world. This data and all the data you'll see throughout this webinar comes from the Edge by Ascential proprietary retail market monitor database. So these are data points that we have aggregated and forecasted over the next few years through 2025. This chart shows sales for household and pet care consumer spending in 2018 and 2023, as well as the sales added between those 5 years. In North America, which is where we'll focus most of this presentation on today, they're the 2nd largest region for household and pet care spending and growth, just coming after the Asia Pacific region. And we're seeing a lot of growth in the North America region, especially as Mark was saying earlier, millennials are reaching that peak consumption age where they're starting to own homes and start their families and spend more on those household and pet care categories. Even the single millennials or people in single smaller households, they're willing to pay more of a premium for higher quality products or products that align better with some of their priorities, like being eco-friendly and green. We're also seeing the rates of pet ownership rise across all regions, but especially within the US, we're seeing this rise a lot for the millennial generations again. So that's why we're seeing a lot of growth within the consumer spending for the household and pet care categories. Now, the future of the household and pet care categories is going to be shaped by some broader trends within society and technology as well. Some of these external factors include changing consumer behaviors and priorities, as well as advancement in technologies. So the first driver of change that I really want to talk about is that growing demand for experiences. As we all know, consumers more and more are shifting their spending towards experiences rather than products. And so we're seeing, especially millennials, eating out more, paying more money for services, and saving some of that money that they might spend on products for other things like traveling and more of that experiences. This trend is really going to transform the way retailers lay out their store space and try to add more of that experiential element to their stores than ever before. The second trend here revolves a lot around that growing health and wellness priority and concern. And within the household and pet care category, one of the main priorities there for consumers is sustainability. They're caring more and more about how the products they're buying affects the environment, if they're sustainable, and they care more about what ingredients are going into their products, especially products that they're using within their home to clean their homes, and also what kind of pet food that they're feeding their dogs or cats. So sustainability is going to be another big driver for these 2 categories. Lastly, and one of the other big trends I wanted to touch on is digital advancements. And this is probably the most fundamental driver for the household and pet care category, as it will completely transform the way shoppers buy these categories and discover products within the household and pet care categories. Things like artificial intelligence and connected products are going to completely evolve the path to purchase, where consumers can now order these products through voice or through auto replenishment, talk to chatbots for recommendations, rather than just the traditional path to purchase of going into the store to find the products that they need. These digital advancements are also accelerating the shift of household and pet care products from offline to online. This infographic shows the 2018 US online share of several categories, as well as their growth rate between 2018 and 2023. As we can see here in the highlighted box, pet care and household care are growing quite quickly relative to some of the other categories, with a growth rate of 14% for household care and 17% for pet care. Now, their online share is still a lot smaller than some of the other early movers, such as consumer electronics or office supplies. And that's because these two categories are at a much earlier stage of their online development right now. They're still at a very much an earlier stage, similar to other categories like vitamins or personal care products. In the future, though, down the road, these two categories have a much higher potential to move online as more retailers are investing in these categories, and consumers are also turning more towards e-commerce platforms for these household and pet care products. We'll especially see pet care reach a high penetration online, since it's also a little less experiential than the pet care category. So household products will move more through auto replenishment, subscription programs, which we'll talk about later on in the initiative section as well. Now, when we look at the online platform or online channel in the context of all the other channels, it still holds a much smaller sales volume right now than some of the other store-based channels we're seeing. So in this chart here, you can see the top channels by US household and pet care sales in 2018 and 2023, as well as their 5-year growth rate. E-commerce is still number 6 or 7 here on the chart, and they're just a little under $12 billion, coming after discounters and cash and carry channels. However, when we're looking at 2023, they're going to double their sales and become the 3rd largest channel for the household and pet care category. Their growth rate is also going to be much faster and outpacing all the other store-based channels here that we're seeing. So they're going to become a channel that you'll really want to prioritize in terms of where you're investing a lot of resources and capabilities. Hyperstores and supermarkets will continue to remain the top 2 channels here for household and pet care sales. And as Mark was saying, a lot of brands are also trying to invest more in these categories, where in these channels where they're becoming a one-stop shop and adding more of that convenience factor. We're also seeing discounters grow quite quickly for a store-based channel, and they're actually the fastest growing store-based channel here on our chart. A lot of that has to do with the fact that consumers are becoming a lot more value conscious and also a lot less brand loyal. So they're not prioritizing certain brands anymore. They don't mind buying private label products. And so people are turning to discounters to get more cheaper, more affordable products within the household and pet care categories as well. When we go down one more level of granularity and look at this at a retailer view, we see a similar story where for the top retailers, it's dominated by the larger chain who have huge scale, but the fastest growing retailer is actually Amazon, which is very much e-commerce driven. So here we can see Amazon has a 2018 to 2023 growth rate of over 11%, far higher than any of the other store-based chains we see here. Still and then Amazon, we're also seeing a lot of investments that they're putting into both the household and pet care category by expanding their assortment, creating more private label products within those categories as well, which is driving a lot of that growth. Walmart and PetSmart will still be the top 2 players over the next 5 years, so they'll still be must-win retailers for a lot of our brands here today, but they're also going to lag behind in terms of growth compared to Amazon. Now, these top 10 retailers, they're not the only important players to keep an eye on within this landscape. In the last decade, we're seeing more and more digitally native or direct-to-consumer brands emerge in the household and pet care sector that's really disrupting the traditional brands in the value chain. We're seeing pure-play retailers like Honest Company, which sells household products as well as personal care and baby products. We see subscription boxes like BarkBox really come into prominence. And we're even seeing more traditional brands like P&G launch newer direct-to-consumer brands in order to remain competitive against all these newcomers and new challengers in the landscape. all these emerging players are really forcing traditional business models to redevelop their offering and innovate with new products, new initiatives, both online and offline. So within this next section, we'll explore some of the new initiatives that both retailers and suppliers, emerging and traditional, are working on. And all the activities we're seeing in this landscape can be grouped under 4 core initiatives, or 4 core areas, which we define as our 4 winning strategies here at Edge by Ascential. The first is the store of the future. And within this, we're going to see stores becoming a lot more experiential with value-adding service. And then the assortment within the store become more curated and rationalized as store space is being dedicated to more perimeter categories and more services. For e-commerce and digital ecosystem, our second winning strategy, we're going to see e-commerce gain a larger share of the category as online platforms expand the assortment they offer and their general ecosystem to offer more services in those 2 categories. For supply chain and fulfillment, we're going to see fulfillment become a lot faster, more flexible, and more sustainable. So we'll see some development, especially in packaging and actual product itself, that becomes more sustainable and optimized for e-commerce in terms of being easier and cheaper to ship. And finally, for the last winning strategy under engagement and retention, we'll see a lot more usage of data to create more personalized offering for shoppers and a creation of a captive ecosystem through subscription and auto replenishment scheme to lock in shoppers in future purchases. Within the store of the future, as we mentioned before, retailers are really focusing on experiences and curation. Retailers are dedicating more space towards services in their stores. As we saw earlier, one of the biggest drivers for this category is that shift in spending towards experiences. So we're seeing stores allocate more space towards perimeter and fresh categories, as well as services in stores. This is especially relevant for the pet category. And so the example I wanted to highlight here is Petco in their new Pet Coach store banner. This store banner is their online proof store where more than 2/3 of the store space is dedicated towards services such as pet daycare, pet training and grooming area, and even a vet clinic in the store. Petco is also partnering with a specialist pet dog food brand called Just Food for Dogs in more than 500 of their namesake stores to open exhibition kitchens and pantry where shoppers can go in and see the dog food actually being made right within the store and see exactly what type of ingredients are going into that the food that they're feeding their pets. And so they're really emphasizing that experiential element within the store through services and demo areas to provide more engagement and education for the consumers. Now, we're not just seeing this for specialist retailers either. Other mass merchandise and mainstream retailers are also following this trend as well. So Walmart's a great example of that, where they recently announced that they're adding over 100 veterinary clinics to their stores. And again, this is a big focus for the pet care category. And we're going to see more focus and more space allocation towards that. The dedication towards services and experiences here is also a way for retailers to really to differentiate from the online offering and also draw in more customer traffic within their store as well. Now, retailers are not only changing the way they're allocating space within the store, but they're also changing the actual assortment itself. There's been, obviously, as you all know, a lot of pressure on the center store categories, and a lot of that's moving online. So store-based retailers are really rationalizing a lot of the assortment within the store and also dedicating more existing shelf space towards their own private label brands in order to protect margins. Target's a great example of this, where they're known for their exclusive brands and private label products, and they've invested a lot in the household category recently. They've launched a brand earlier this year called Smartly within the household care and cleaning category, where They launched 70 SKUs, and the products are actually about 70% cheaper than comparable brands. Earlier this month, or last month actually, they also launched another household care and cleaning brand called Everspring, which is aimed at a higher price point, as it's a more eco-friendly and natural type of household product and cleaning line. And that's still 20% cheaper than some of their competitors. So Target's really investing a lot in creating this exclusivity and private label for their stores. And so brands now aren't only fighting to retain that center store space within their retail partners, but they're also fighting to remain on the shelf and to stand out on the shelf. Because retailers are investing a lot in private label, not just to offer value, but also to have that exclusivity and differentiation from other national brands. And so this will challenge traditional brands to have to innovate even further to stand out on the shelf. And now, while we're seeing store-based retailers in the store of the future rationalize their assortment, we're going to see actually the opposite trend happening online, where online platforms are actually expanding their offering within the household and pet care categories. We're seeing a lot of e-commerce players who are not traditionally selling household and pet care products actually invest in expanding their assortment within that space to become a one-stop shop for their consumers. They want to be known as the place where consumers can find anything and everything. So they're adding more and more categories online. And the example I wanted to highlight here is that of Brandless, which is a pure play retailer that sells brandless products. And they recently in January launched their pet care category. And what's interesting about this website is that most of their products actually price at around $3. So it's a much cheaper alternative to a lot of other brands that you may find. And they started off with household products and now expanding to pet care to really offer everything for their customers. We're seeing other traditional retailers doing the same thing as well. Amazon has expanded their private label to pet care and pet food with their new WAG line, and Walmart's Jet.com platform is partnering with a customized pet food subscription startup called Ollie to offer the specialized and natural pet food on their platform as well. So we're seeing a lot of investment in this, which is highly driven by one of the factors we were talking about before, that millennial age group reaching peak consumption and also having a higher pet ownership rate in the US. So these retailers are really trying to target that demographic through having convenient e-commerce offerings and investing more in these two categories to gain market share. Now, retailers aren't just investing in assortment. They're also investing in creating more services within their ecosystem in general and provide more services than just retail transactions. In the example here to the right, Walmart had launched their online pet pharmacy, Walmart Pet RX, where consumers can find over 300 brands of pet medication online. The website offers 2-day shipping for orders over $35, adding to that convenience factor shoppers are looking for. And they also provide live customer service and easy reordering option to really retain and offer personalized services to these shoppers. They're even using e-commerce data to help inform assortment decisions in store. So there's a really great seamless bridge between offline to online within this example. Walmart's taking their data and looking at what the top 30 most requested medication are, and they're going to be stocking their in-store pharmacies with those products. So consumers who want those pet medication within the same day can go find that in most stores. And so retailers are not just doubling down in assortment offering, but they're really trying to become more of an authority in pet care and pet health care as well. Now, we talked about a lot about the pet care category, but we're seeing similar trends as well in the household care category. P&G has launched an on-demand dry cleaning and laundry service that's an app-based service where consumers can request to get their laundry done and have it delivered right back into their home. So P&G is not just selling detergent anymore, but they're actually offering a service to expand their ecosystem and have more of that offering and additional revenue streams. And when we talk about ecosystem expansion, some of the best-in-class examples to look at will be Walmart and Amazon, where they have the most extensively built-out digital ecosystem, from things like this Pet RX platform, as well as anything from fulfillment services to entertainment platforms. This is really going to pressure a lot of the pet specialists, retailers, or smaller retailers who may not have as well of a built-out ecosystem or digital capabilities. But no matter who you are, to truly enable success in e-commerce and the digital world, retailers and brands have to make sure that they have a well built out logistics and supply chain network that can support the growing demand for fast and flexible fulfillment of online orders. And so within the supply chain and fulfillment winning strategy here, we're seeing many retailers competing to win with the fastest and cheapest fulfillment option, especially as Amazon and Walmart are putting more pressure on retailers by making things like one-day or same-day fulfillment the norm for consumers. And as you all know, consumers are expecting instant gratification. They want their products right here and right now. So that's going to really drive a lot of retailers to try to meet those demands by offering the fastest fulfillment possible. But for some specialists or smaller retailers who might not have a built-out logistic network like Walmart or Amazon, they're going to have to increasingly turn towards strategic partnerships in order to accomplish that. So we're seeing a lot of retailers partner with third-party delivery intermediaries like Instacart or Shipt to offer that quick same-day service. So in this example, Petco is partnering with Shipt to offer same-day delivery from 1,300 of their stores, and this is enabling them to reach over 70 million households in the U.S. And Petco is not the only retailer doing this. They're just one of the more recent examples that we've seen, but take Target, for example, who even acquired Shipt. They now offer same-day delivery to almost at a nationwide level for all their categories, and they even have specific fast fulfillment programs for the household category in particular, with their Target Restock program where they offer next day shipping for household essentials. Now on the brand side, in order to reduce delivery time and delivery costs, they actually have to innovate a lot of the product and the packaging themselves to make sure that it's optimized for e-commerce and is also sustainable to meet consumer priorities. We've seen some development in refillable packaging or recyclable packaging in order to cut down on waste and make the packages lighter and easier to ship. And P&G here, through this example, has really taken that innovation to the nth degree. And they've completely transformed the product itself through their new DS3 line, which has launched very recently in 2019. This is a line of liquid-free household and personal care products that are activated with water once you are ready to use them, but the product itself doesn't contain any liquid. And the fact that it has no water within the product, that reduces the weight of the products by 80% compared to regular, detergent or shampoo bottles. And it also reduces the space required to ship these products by 70%, making it much more cost effective to deliver these products to consumers and also to their retail partners. Not only does this example tackle fulfillment costs, but it also addresses consumer priorities around sustainability, with the product being liquid-free, not containing any bleaches or any phosphates, and the packaging is also biodegradable and recyclable. Many retailers are focusing on creating more of this sustainable packaging as well. We've seen Amazon partner with Replenish for their Clean Revolution household care line, where they offer refillable packaging, and after the first purchase, consumers only have to buy the replacement pods, which are only 4 ounces to ship, much lighter and much cheaper to deliver compared to actual full-size bottles. We're also seeing retailers like Kroger and Walmart partner with organizations like Loop, where consumers get products in metal or glass packages, and once they're done with that, they can send the packages back to get cleaned and refilled, and that can be used again for future orders. So that's definitely something really top of mind for consumers, and both retailers and brands are focusing a lot around sustainability here. in order to also improve their brand image. And this will allow them to better connect with consumers, align with their philosophies and priorities. And that's really been something that retailers and brands have focused a lot on in terms of engaging with consumers. Other areas of consumer engagement and retention that we've seen a lot of focus on lately is around personalization and expanding consumer touch points, as well as trying to create a subscription and auto replenishment scheme to encourage future purchases. In this example on the left here for Ollie, this is a direct-to-consumer pet food brand or dog food brand that offers personalized or customized dog food based on your pet's weight, age, breed, and even activity level. Now, brands have to work more and more to retain shoppers and make sure that shoppers remain loyal to them, because there's so many brands out there, new and emerging direct-to-consumer and digitally native brands fighting for consumers' attention. So brands like Ollie are leveraging this idea of personalization to really attract consumers and acquire them to begin with. So Ollie uses both artificial intelligence and their own pet staff, pet nutritionists, to determine what pet food is the right one for you. And so through the personalization platform, they can offer a more customized recommendation for consumers. And since their launch, they've also expanded their touch point in order to reach more consumers. Recently, Ollie partnered with Jet.com to sell some of their products on the Jet.com 3P marketplace. And they've also even expanded beyond just the retail platform. They are partnering with Zola, which is a wedding registry website, to allow the Zola users to add Ollie products to their wedding registry. So they're really becoming a bigger part of consumer life beyond just retail transactions. They're getting on wedding registry, getting their brand out there, building brand awareness in all types of touch points for consumers. Ollie also operates on a subscription program through their own D2C website, and that's really a way to lock in shoppers and make sure that they're coming back to you for those repeat purchases and future purchases, which brings us to our last trend here within customer engagement and retention. A lot of retailers and brands in the household and pet care categories are focusing on creating subscription and auto replenishment models, because these two categories are really ideal for that auto replenishment type of business model. Household and pet care categories are generally low involvement and they're recurring purchases. So after consumers make their decision of what products they want to buy the first time, once they like it and they need it on a regular basis, they're going to want the convenience of being able to get those items delivered to you right when you need it, and not having to store inventory within their small households and have that pile up in their homes. Auto replenishment and subscription allows them to get the products just as they need it. So things like toilet paper, tissues, dog food, things that you would need to replenish on a regular basis, a lot of that we're going to see move through the auto replenishment and subscription programs. We're also seeing auto replenishment programs becoming smarter through some of the digital advancement we talked about at the beginning. So things like connected products and Internet of Things sensors that can tell consumers or sense when the inventory is running low and automatically reorder the products just as consumers need it. We're seeing that becoming much more of a trend, with brands like LG or Samsung creating these smart appliances that can reorder your detergent or dishwasher liquid just as you need it. And locking in shoppers is not just beneficial for ensuring repeat purchases in the future, as they're increasing switching costs and building that loyalty, but it's also providing both brands and retailers with some very lucrative shopper data that they might not be able to get otherwise. And they are receiving consistent data on a month-to-month basis, or whatever the frequency may be, and they can know how often shoppers might buy these products and plan their decisions around that. And so this access to data is going to be a crucial differentiator for a lot of brands and retailers going forward, and that's going to be a huge advantage across all four winning strategies, as data can really help inform assortment decisions both online and offline, help plan the most efficient logistics or supply chain routes, as well as help create some of that more personalized offers and communications that consumers are looking for, especially within customer engagement and retention. And so to wrap up this webinar, I wanted to take everyone through a few final takeaways and implications for some of the things that we have talked about, and some go summarize all those winning strategies that we just went over. The first biggest takeaway is that consumers are spending more on the household and pet care category. These two categories are going to be a big part of both retailer and consumer mindsets. So it's definitely a category that's going to continue to be innovated and developed around. A lot of this growth, though, we will see move online, especially as e-commerce platforms or pure play retailers like Amazon invest more in the categories. Still, there's going to be a large opportunity for retailers and brands to win in the store-based channel as well, where we see Walmart still having a huge lead in terms of holding a lot of that household and pet care sales. And we're also seeing discounters growing quite quickly compared to some of the other store-based channels, and being the second fastest growing channel was under e-commerce. So those are still two players or channels to still focus on and prioritize around. It'll also still be important to monitor these emerging direct-to-consumer and digitally native players, as more of them will enter the household and pet care space and heighten competition for brands, or also offer a new place for consumers to make purchases as a potential new retailer. And these direct-to-consumer brands and digitally native brands, they're so successful and growing so quickly because they can better align with a lot of the shopper priorities, since they're so new and small and very agile compared to more traditional business models. And some of these shopper priorities include experiences, convenience, and sustainability. Shoppers will want more value-adding service out of their shopping journey. They want convenience, and they'll want to make sure that whatever they're buying is ethical, and products and ingredients are sustainable and good for their homes and for their pets. Now, for the convenience factor, shoppers are more and more going to turn towards those online platforms for their household and pet care purchases. With that said, these two categories are still very much in the early stages of their online shift. So that's why we're seeing a lot of retailers and suppliers focusing a lot of the innovative initiatives around e-commerce and supply chain capabilities, like ecosystem expansion or fast fulfillment. On the storefront side, we're seeing two different trends. For the household category, we're going to see within the store the household category and space becoming more rationalized. So the assortment there is going to be more rationalized and face greater competition from private label brands within the store. On the other hand, for the pet care category within store, that space is really going to become more experiential, with more areas for services or demoing and educational services. Now, we've talked a lot about what does this mean for brands and retailer. We've talked a lot about how retailers are growing online in the household and pet care space, but they're also getting additional revenue through their online platform by generating some of that advertising income. So suppliers should really test some of these new ad features or sponsored listing in order to gain greater visibility and traffic to their product pages. And also, they will need to ensure that their digital content is strong in order to increase conversion. For these advertising services and paid listing, the best retailer or the main players to engage with right now are Amazon and Walmart. They're the ones who have developed these features the most compared to other retailers in this space, and that's the one where you'll get the most learning from as a supplier on their platform. It's still important to acknowledge, though, that other retailers as well are getting into the space at a pretty quick pace, with retailers like Target, Kroger, and Albertson all exploring this area of advertising as an additional income. Now, to succeed in the e-commerce driven world, suppliers will also need to reevaluate the product and packaging development and research process. They would need to make sure that their products are optimized for e-commerce through size and weight minimization, and they also need to ensure product protection for that delivery process, especially with a lot of these household care products being very liquid based. They also want to make sure that they're addressing consumer priorities of sustainability. So going back to that example of the P&G liquid-free product or sustainable packaging, that's going to be very top of mind for a lot of consumers. Finally, suppliers will also want to consider the changing household dynamics, especially the one we're seeing in the US, where we're seeing more single or smaller households for the millennial generation here in the US. So suppliers will want to consider developing products that fit their needs within these smaller households. For example, I read an article from the Wall Street Journal the other day where P&G developed this Charmin Forever roll. It's a roll of toilet paper that has 1,700 sheets in it because they found through their consumer research that singles and aging consumers would rather have one large roll of toilet paper rather than multiple rolls to store somewhere in their home. So things like that is examples like those is what retailers and suppliers would want to innovate around and make sure they consider as they go through the research and development process for future products. Finally, as we see more and more of that center store move online, suppliers will really need a strong or compelling reason to stay within the store, whether that means becoming the category captain or providing value-adding services for their retail partners. Otherwise, suppliers will need to focus on optimizing their price points or strategically use assortment rotation to maximize profitability. So they might want to look at some of those more sustainable products, sell that at a higher price point in order to gain more profit for the space that they have. Otherwise, suppliers will want to lean in towards moving online and focus on investing in those digital capabilities. So with that, I wanted to thank everyone for joining me today during the webinar, and then I'll turn it over to Mark to see if there are any questions from the audience.
Well, thanks, Maud, for your partnership in this area and working closely with our Education Leadership Council. We appreciate all the insights and the involvement that, that your company brings and delivers for our membership. We do have a few questions, so let's go ahead and dig into those now. Maud, Jeff is asking, do you see a trend towards convenience over price, especially in regards to online shopping habits?
Yeah, and I do think that's definitely a trend we're seeing, especially among, again, the millennial consumers. They're willing to pay more of a premium for convenience. So if that means paying extra for the same day shipping option or getting something delivered to a locker in their local grocery store, we're definitely seeing that be an option. And retailers, I think, are also trying to work around that as well by offering both convenience and value. So that's one of the big trends we're seeing with the subscription programs. You know, Amazon, Walmart have their subscribe and save options where you get the convenience of having your products at a scheduled frequency, and you're also getting a discount by subscribing to that option. So retailers are also responding to that shift towards, you know, paying a premium for convenience.
Susan is asking, will the shift online for the household category differ from the shift online on the pet care category? Sorry.
Yeah, I think definitely right now they're both still in the early stages of their online shift, but as those two categories mature more on the e-commerce platforms, we're going to see the household care platform move more towards that auto replenishment and subscription program as we were talking about, especially since they're a little less experiential than pet care categories. So you don't have to worry about changing your pet food as your pet gets older or need different types of meals. So household care category is a little more ideal in that way, where it's always going to be the same product. So because of that, I would expect the household category to reach a higher online penetration than pet care when they both reach that online maturity level of their highest potential. Whereas a lot of the pet care there's still going to be a lot more focus on creating more of that digital and educational content online, offering curation options online like chatbots and quizzes and whatnot to help shoppers determine what the right products are for them.
That's great. Mike is asking, what are the benefits for brands in operating D2C model? And what do brands need to do in order to succeed in a D2C business model?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so for the direct-to-consumer model, a lot of brands will benefit from having more control over their image, over their story, and they also cut out the middleman, so they might be able to sell their products for a lower price and also gain a lot of that lucrative consumer data that we were talking about earlier in the consumer engagement and retention section, where they don't have to work with retailers to get that data back, they get it directly. But there's also a lot of capabilities that need to be built out in order for brands to operate on a D2C platform, such as having the right fulfillment network, managing returns, also competing with other retailers who might be offering the same products as you. So D2C might not be the right solution for everyone. So if brands want to go down that road, they need to really make sure that they're offering something differentiated or something exclusive to stand out from retailers and or other competitors, and also really build a lot of brand awareness around that so consumers actually know that that is an option.
Mon, I think we've got time for one more. Albert is asking, with the expansion of in-store pet services like Walmart and PetRx, do you see the OTC pet healthcare category growing?
That's definitely a good question. And that's definitely something that I'll have to think about a little more. But just off the top of my head right now, I do think that, having that convenience of, especially with the increasing rate of pet ownership, that category has a good potential to gain more space within the store, especially as they're being coupled with some of these services that we're seeing. So we might see, the pet nutritionist that you go see in store having a set of curated and recommended pet OTC products. And so if that's a category that's going to be expanded, I think it's got to go hand in hand with a little bit of that service and experiential element, whether it's in terms of merchandising this category or having just other value adding services for that.
Great. Well, Maud, thanks again for today's session and all your contributions. And thank you from our viewers as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
If this is your first time experiencing a GMDC Infocast, I'd like to make sure that you're aware that this session and all previous Infocast events can be viewed on the archive tab on gmdcconnect.org, along with a schedule to register for future Infocasts. I know we're scheduling throughout the summer and even early fall, so please keep a lookout for those that are coming. I'd also like to encourage you to get involved with GMDC and become a member. Today's Infocast is just a small sample of what members have access to. And remember, GMDC is a business ecosystem that helps you connect your people and organizations to opportunities for growth, both in the GM and the HBW industry. For more information, please contact me at markm@gmdc.org. And I'd love to help you find opportunities to get your company exposed to high-profile executives and decision makers. Thanks for joining us today. I hope the rest of your week is as productive as this last hour has been. Take care.